Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right. I was going to call this synergistic leveraging of AI and cloud technologies in a single pane of glass to integrate into your SOAR. It was too long of a title. They didn't like it here. But I want to call out something for KernelCon because I've been coming here for a while and seeing how it's growing is really, really important to me. And I judge conferences by two basic criteria. And I know it's weird, but those criteria involve going to the bathroom. First and foremost, if your con has a line for women to get into the women's restroom, that's a fantastic thing. Check. Well done, CactusCon. Give yourselves a round of applause. Second thing about bathrooms that I think is important is if you're in the bathroom, in any bathroom, men or women, I'm assuming, if there's a line for people to wash their hands, also a successful con. Round of applause on that as well. I know that those are weird criteria to judge conferences by, but I've been doing this for, we were just talking, a quarter century, and that's kind of what I boiled it down to. All the bad cons I've been to don't have those two traits. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get started on this. I have a disclaimer. I used AI to generate some of the images in this presentation. I think that that's incredibly important whenever people are utilizing the great plagiarisms in the sky that are available to all of us to steal the things that have been stolen from others, to at least be honest about the fact of that theft that we are stealing. And I've tried to share the prompts as much as I possibly can. This is one that shows up later on in the presentation. I said, I would like a picture of a cow, overweight, smoking, and drinking on a couch. It seems burnt out, has stubble. Seems like it's very tired. His life has not gone the way he wanted in love and work and personal growth. He has failed, basically, like Homer Simpson's monkey mojo, sitting on the couch, smoking and drinking, but a cow. And I think that this type of thing, AI does exceptionally well anytime you ask it to do so. And you'll see this picture here in just a little bit, but I'm just trying to be honest about the times that I use AI because I'm seeing a lot of presentations with like really killer pictures. And you're like, you didn't make that. It's all AI and what's generated for it. All right, so I want to get right to the as quickly as we possibly can. Whenever we're looking at attacks and we're moving forward over the next 5 years, I have some grave concerns about the security industry. I can say this because I'm an old curmudgeon. I've been doing this a long time. Even though I have employees, and some of you are on my Discord server, that'll argue with me and say, dude, you're not old. And I'm like, yes, I am old. I have arguments with myself about whether or not my ear hairs can grow an extra day before I need to trim them. So I feel like I'm old. I've been around this industry. I've been doing this a very long time. And there's some things that bother me. And since I'm an entitled old man, I'm going to share it all with you. The first thing I want to talk about is new nation state style attacks. And this gets into a number of the things that we're going to discuss throughout this presentation and how these modern level attacks are leveraging technologies that very few people you encounter in the industry are actually testing or interacting with at all. I like to use NSO Group as an example. Whenever you think of NSO Group, what is the big thing that always shows up in the news about NSO Group? You just shout it out. It's fine. It's customer participation. Pegasus, right? Everyone talks about this malware. Pegasus showed up on this reporter's phone. Pegasus was used in Kyoshi. I can't remember the gentleman's name that was killed in Turkey. It was on his phone. We're seeing Pegasus deployed. I don't care about Pegasus. Pegasus for me is just malware. Malware in many ways is not that interesting to me, other than how it bypasses existing security technologies. But almost every malware report that you read has the same thing. It's like, this malware has the capability of communicating with an HTTPS server in the cloud. Okay, good. Yeah, that kind of expected that. It also has the capability of running commands on the device. Okay, yep, you just literally described an implant. Thank you. I'm not interested in Pegasus. But what I am interested in, what I'm very, very interested in, is how does it get there? That is something I don't see a lot of people talking about. What NSO Group has, insofar as a capability, is they have the capability to deploy zero-click malware through advertisements to almost any device. Windows, Linux, Mac, mobile devices. You identify the profile in which you want the malvertisement to be delivered to, and they will deliver it through existing ad networks. And that's something that should terrify absolutely all of us. Because how many pen testers do you run across that are actually testing using those techniques? How many of you in this room are using a personal device that also has your corporate or your organizational email on it? How many of you work in industries that you consider to be sensitive enough to be targeted by nation-state level adversaries? And this is not limited to something like the NSO group. All nation states have it. I will tell you the Israelis are much further ahead as far as a unified platform to be able to do this. And I know this because way back in COVID, I got a weird call from a friend of mine who will go unnamed. And he said, we need you to get to Israel as quickly as you possibly can. I'm like, that's an odd thing to say during COVID. Actually, it's an odd thing to say for pretty much any time. And he said, there's a company over there, you may have heard them, called NSO, that is banned from selling their products in the United States. And right now, there's a whole bunch of people that are trying to create front companies to be able to acquire the technology so they can sell it to the market in the United States. And I said, well, who are their customers? Well, DOD, FBI, CIA, they want to buy this sweet, sweet technology. And they're currently banned from buying this technology. But if we can create shell companies as a front, be able to get that, then we can start using that technology here. That concerned me for a number of reasons. The NSO group is literally an extension of the Israeli military. And I like to think of the NSO group as like this amazing self-licking ice cream cone. Think about who their customers are that we know of. Saudi Arabia is one for sure. You can go to almost any dictatorship in the world and they're buying NSO's software to be able to spy and attack their citizens. Also, whenever you're running their software, you get to run their software and it has to call back to the home base in Israel. So literally, some of the biggest people that want Israel wiped off the face of the planet are buying the software, installing this software in their most sensitive operations, and basically giving the Israeli military direct access to their most sensitive networks. Think about that. Can you imagine the people at NSA? They're being like, God damn, we could have done something like this. Like, why do we make it so hard? We just make something awesome and sell it and they buy it? Yeah, it's pretty much that simple, right? But this is going to be painting a larger problem that exists in pen testing. And my second to last slide, I'm going to talk about some things that we need to come to grips with as we're looking at cloud technologies, ad delivery technologies, and things that we have to think of moving forward over the next 5 years in trying to start doing security assessments appropriately. The corollary to a lot of technologies, whenever we're looking at the cloud, is mobile. There's a great presentation out there, The Coming War on General Purpose Computation. In it, we have this conversation around all of the major vendors don't want you to have a general purpose computer system. Think about the way Windows was back in Windows XP, Windows 7. Okay, maybe not, Windows Vista. We'll just skip over that one. But if we're looking at general purpose computer systems, right? And Cory Doctorow is the author, and he's the guy with the drill, I think. When we look at general purpose computer systems, there are computer systems that you own. You can purchase the computer, you have access to the operating system, you can run whatever software you want on that operating system, you can install that software however you want on your operating system. Going back to Steve Ballmer on stage, going developers, 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 developers. All of this was about trying to create software that you can run on your computer systems. This created two beautiful things and a terrifying thing. A beautiful thing was it allowed everybody to write software and deliver it however they could get it to everybody, right? The second thing that is beautiful is it allowed interoperability. That's why Steve Ballmer was talking developers, 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 so that it could be exchanged and installed in a wide variety of software or hardware platforms. And it's truly what Microsoft is, and it's beautiful what they gave us. An environment that is basically a bag of drivers that allows us to run an operating system on a wide variety of different computer systems. Those days are quickly coming to a close. One of those things that people bitch about incessantly is Windows 11. How many of you hate Windows 11? Please raise your hands, right? This side of the room, oddly enough, these guys, relatively cool with it, except you. I saw you. You're cool, right? One of the problems with what we're seeing with operating systems is the idea of a general purpose computing platform is going away. The platforms are constantly getting pushed more and more and more to be extensions of cloud computing. That's what they're trying to do. If you're looking at, I don't have my phone, it's in my bag. If you're looking at like an iOS device, it's a closed ecosystem. You can install software. It's a pain in the ass to do it. General people can't do it. Android, same thing. But you have a problem in that the vendors are trying to lock down the platforms as much as they possibly can in order to make sure that you buy your software exclusively through their stores. Because that is the only thing that matters to them, is the market share and the ability of making every damn dime that they can off of selling you software through their cloud infrastructure. This opens up large, weird vulnerabilities. I'll be talking about it more a little bit later, but when you're looking at a lot of the apps that you're installing on Windows computer systems, they're trying to move to HTML5 apps that are sandbox. They're trying to create an ecosystem that is a replication of the Android and iOS ecosystems, and that creates monstrous security vulnerabilities that people do not talk about. Further things we do not talk about is whenever we're looking at trying to get authorization as a pen testing company to test personal devices, it's almost 0% of the time. Even though there is corporate and organizational asset data that are on these devices, to get permission for me to try to break into anybody's personal phone on a company is absolutely impossible. And the reason why it's impossible, as near as I can tell, is porn. It comes back to porn every time, guys. It's just right there again. And everyone's afraid of their privacy, right? And I find it strange. There was a cartoon that I saw where somebody was like, you know, I'm really terrified of the government surveilling me. And then it shows them talking to an Alexa device, and they're like, hey, surveillance device, can you order more toilet paper? It's so weird how we're so fearful of our privacy, and yet we're constantly giving it away at all times. So this is creating multiple different issues for us in this industry, because at the heart of our industry for the longest time was testing and evaluation. Many vendors were terrified of the people in this room because we love taking shit apart. And as they move things to the cloud more and more and more, it gets more and more difficult for people to take things. Am I having a stroke? Okay, I'm having a stroke and you all find it funny. All right. All right. So, too bright. We work in IT. Dark mode. Yes, somebody enabled dark mode, right? So, this is another problem, right? And by the way, testing of mobile devices and applications is not impossible. You have Android emulation environments. You have Corellium for cloud virtualization, so you can test things. It is possible. It's just not as easy as it is on a general purpose computer system to be able to stand it up, debug it, and take it apart. So they're trying to tell us constantly, this is for our own good. If we can only install software from their designated stores to their designated standards and using their SaaS distribution channels, then everything's going to be more secure because it's going to be more validated and you can totally trust us. And none of that is true. We are a pain in the ass in this industry. I only have 0 minutes left? Okay, I'm like, good God, I didn't think I've been going that long. But we need to be a pain in the ass again, right? XKCD, right? Randall Monroe does an amazing job of articulating these things where they talk about all modern digital infrastructure, and they say a project some random person in Nebraska has been thanklessly maintaining since 2003. This is not just for the software that you download. This is also for the cloud infrastructures that everything is built on. I have done a lot of work with cloud vendors, a lot of work. I have seen what's behind the curtain. And it's like that scene in Community where you walk into a room with a whole bunch of pizza and everything's on fire and everyone's fighting. That's what the back-end infrastructure of almost every cloud provider looks like. You talk to a lot of the people and you're like, how the hell does all this shit work? And they're like, I have no idea. I just know you can't touch that system. Don't update that system because the internet will die. And it's like, constantly running into these problems. So when you're looking at this infrastructure problem that we have, you have this idea that it's all like really super smart people in white lab coats with like little easels, drawing things out and writing everything down using math and crap. No, It's literally a whole bunch of people saying, what open source software can we take advantage of to deploy this as quickly as possible? Again and again and again. And that poor guy that's running this stuff in Nebraska is responsible for a bunch of people getting on stage in leather jackets talking about how their market capitalization is $1 trillion. This is ranty. I'm sorry. If you haven't met me before, I'm like this a lot. So here's some of the issues, right? We keep going. There's more. We look at supply chain attacks. If we look at what's underpinning any of the cloud infrastructure technology that exists out there today, you have like things like Cisco. All the way back in 2008, I was running around classified facilities trying to rip out Cisco gear because the Chinese had put a back door in that gear. And from that point, everyone learned that we shouldn't be relying on China for all of our infrastructure and all of our technology. And we diversified our supply chain with United States companies and other companies that we trusted. None of that happened. The Cisco rep came and said, we're real sorry about that. We'll take those back. Can we get a refund? No. It had a back door from China. Yeah, that wasn't in our terms of use. That's not force majeure, right? We had solar winds, right? All the way up to F5. And when we're looking at these nation-state level adversary style attacks, we're seeing amazing capabilities from full command and control to full dwell, possibly setting up kill switches. I can't remember one of the latest ones. I was on the news with Black Hills InfoSec, and I was talking about everyone seems to think whenever the Chinese or the Russians or even the NSA breaks into something that their primary goal is to put a full command and control infrastructure in that. That is not what the Chinese are trying to do. That is not what the Russians are trying to do. That is not what the NSA is trying to do every time. A lot of the stuff that we do as nation states going at it is trying to simply put a kill switch in the code somewhere that we can disable these devices at will. And I guarantee you that is what the Chinese are working on. And the lead times for this is insane. If we go back to the XZ utility, a breach back in 2024, which is one of the most terrifying breaches. Let me set that up. Years and years and years ago, there was a Linux vulnerability that showed up. It was actually pushed through the code analysis. Basically, if you set two switches at the kernel level, wclone and wall, if you set those two kernel level switches in your code, it automatically assigned you to root. It was one simple line of code where they removed one equal sign. Instead of a check, it became an assignment. One character deleted for local privilege escalation on every Linux computer system, and it was caught by Linus Torvalds before he pushed that change up to code, just perusing the code, he caught it. That's the level of change that you can put into code to create these types of security vulnerabilities. If we go back to the XZ utility one, kind of setting that, there's another one with the TCP dump, there's a whole bunch of them. But with XZ utilities, there was somebody that contributed for 5 years to XZ utilities. XZ utilities, by the way, what uses XZ utilities? Everything that uses any encryption. Right there. Used by literally everyone. And somebody had contributed multiple bug fixes to XZ utilities over the space of 5 years, developed trust. And then as soon as they got full write access and commit access, they pushed some changes that looking at the code, I can't see the back door. I'm not that good, but I'm good enough to see some back doors. I couldn't see it. It was in multiple places. You had to reassemble it like Voltron. And it was only caught after a 5-year operation because Andreas Frund noticed that it took a second longer for him to log in via SSH to one of his computers. One dude in Europe started reverse engineering the code to find out what was wrong and why it took a second longer to log in. And he submitted a bug report, and he goes, I think that there's a back door that was put into this. I noticed it took a little bit longer. I reverse engineered it. I'm not 100% certain, but I'd like somebody to look into this. Like the first 5 comments after that request or that issue were people making fun of him for insinuating that there was possibly a backdoor put into XZ utilities. We were this close One person away from having a backdoor in every crypto library that was deployed pretty much on the entire planet. That's the type of adversary. That's the type of stuff that we are dealing with on this. And this type of thing, unfortunately, has to be in your threat model. It does. It's not an issue of just scanning for viruses and checking malware and things like that. I pulled a slide from this because I don't have time for it, but extrusion detection, beaconing analysis, trying to look at what's leaving your environment and not trusting your security tool to always get things right with the alerts that you are dealing with. I mean, this industry, I love this industry because I'm surrounded by people who have a goal and a desire to learn. They have a goal and desire to do better, a goal and desire to take things apart, and we're forced to do compliance. But we fight this all the time, and this is going to get worse here in a second. Also, a little rant, completely sidechain. Whenever you're talking to a lot of security vendors in the space that are writing security tools, do me a favor and ask them if they're using any open source code in their tools. A number of these continuous pen testing vendors that are out there, they have cool products, don't get me wrong, they're neat, but what pisses me off is you go to their booth and they're like, well, we're using all these open source tools underneath our hood and we have a $100 million investment seed round. How much money do you give back to the community? If your tool is completely built on the backs of people doing open source software and you're making millions of dollars and you're not giving anything back, you're an asshole. And we should avoid those companies. Sorry, it's going to get better. I lied. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away that some of you remember and some of you weren't even born yet, Bruce Schneier and Dan Gear had a presentation about the security vulnerabilities associated with monocultures in IT. Specifically, Dan Gear worked at Stake and Bruce Schneier was Bruce Schneier. They wrote this paper specifically talking about the monoculture of Microsoft Windows. And they said, if we have a monoculture where our entire ecosystem is all the same operating system, it greatly increases the risk associated with a virus or a worm being catastrophic in its impact to the overall infrastructure that we have everywhere. And once again, being facetious, the world saw this presentation and thought to themselves, we need to have diversity. We need to have a number of different things to make sure that we are not liable to run into these problems of security. No, they didn't do that. Especially with cloud technologies, we doubled down. I'm going to be honest, this is another AI-generated picture. I know it's hard to tell. I asked AI to create a picture, a funny fail picture, exemplifying failure because everyone's doing the exact same thing. And that's what it came up with, which is a little bit terrifying. I'm also a little scared because like one of these guys in the lower right-hand corner kind of looks like me. I don't know what that's all about. But when we're migrating everything to the cloud, I have concerns because I really don't see the level of security concern from these companies that I would like to, right? I want to give you an idea of what happens behind the doors, right? And these are a lot of conversations I have. I'm not going to name names. Maybe I will. Hell, I don't know. But whenever these vendors are working on products, if you look at like Amazon, you look at Microsoft, if you go to any of their big conferences, they have all this cool effect functionality. They have all of these different things that they're trying. And their whole entire goal is to rapidly develop and prototype concepts and then basically throw that shit at the wall and see what sticks, right? The concern for security and doing proper validation is not there. It's not something that they're concerned about. After something sticks, if something sticks in the AI realm and people start using it, then they start focusing some level of security concern around it. And we see this a lot with Entra ID. We see this a lot with Graph API, Microsoft. And we see a lot of this with Amazon, right? We see a lot of technologies that come out very much half-baked. They feel half-baked because they are. And there's this kind of school of thought in Silicon Valley that it is stupid to sink a lot of time into a technology or a functionality that your customers are not going to be interested in. And they like to use Microsoft Word as the standard bearer because Microsoft Word has all of these crazy features that no one uses. And they talk about that in terms of Microsoft spending billions of dollars developing features that are used by like 2 people on the entire planet. You shouldn't be doing that. So instead of doing that, they do the exact opposite. Let's just get crap garbage out there that's like vibe coded. And by the way, I'm getting into vibe coding here in just a little bit. By the way, there was a vendor out there that's like the vibe coding security solution. I didn't get a chance to talk to them, but I'm going to. I'm kind of interested in that because it's like they understand vibe coding is going to happen. You're not going to fight it. You're not going to beat it. But we can at least try to secure it. I think that that's an interesting, innovative idea. I have to sit and spend more time with them. But they know that this code is going to be developed rapidly. They're just going to push it out there. And then they start tracking the metrics on what's used. Then after the fact, they start putting in security. Maybe. Most of the time, they're like, is it broken? No, don't touch it, right? And the people that developed it move on into the ether. And then when we actually find security vulnerabilities, like when we're working with Microsoft, we currently have a security vulnerability where we can password spray with no logs being generated all day against Office 365, right? So we're currently working with them. And in the past, when we're working with Microsoft, it used to be they could fix the stuff really, really, really quickly. Now it's taking a lot longer, and it's a little bit more difficult for them to figure out exactly where the issue is. And we're going to explain why that happens here in just a little bit. But we have this one picture of, created by AI where I asked it for a prompt. Now this next one is one of my favorites. I asked AI to create a picture of Fred Astaire dancing with the Terminator robot in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, and the Terminator robot saying, "I love humans," and Fred Astaire saying, "I love AI." And the point of me doing this particular picture was, I'm not going to crap on AI, you guys. I'm not. Here, let's go back 3 years ago. If you were in this industry 3 years ago, you were getting your ass kicked. You may be still today. I'm going to get to that here in a second. But you had alert fatigue. You had new technologies that the business units were bringing in constantly with no security evaluation being done on them. And we were sinking. We were drowning. New technologies coming up, headcount staying the same. We didn't have enough time to rapidly ramp up junior people to get them to the skills to where they could handle it. We felt we were constantly drowning. And AI shows up. And AI can help us. AI absolutely should be helping us. We have this tool that can help us identify and triage common vulnerabilities far faster than humans could do. We have these tools in AI. If you look at the MITRE ATT&CK technique matrix, there's hundreds of techniques. It can evaluate your environment from an offensive perspective to identify those vulnerabilities almost instantaneously so that you can focus on the hard custom stuff. We finally had something that truly was going to help us. And instead of all of the companies and all the organizations that have computer security teams saying, thank God, we can now use this technology to augment, assist our humans so our humans can focus on hard problems, corporations said, thank God we got a product we can get rid of people on our security team. That's the only thing that mattered, was headcount, overhead costs. And now, even with these tools, we're still drowning, because people didn't treat it as an augmentation. They looked at it as a replacement. Not that I can blame them. I mean, there's part of me, like I go and I present at executive presentations. I dress differently. I may wear a button-up shirt to those. Still swear a lot. But if I look out over the audience, you can definitely tell that those Venn diagrams between management and us don't touch. It's always funny, somebody from management working with a bunch of IT people and management after it's done, find hand sanitizer as quickly as they can, right? So I don't know if you noticed something wrong with this picture. I went to AI after it generated this picture and I said, hey, you did a great job, AI. But did you notice that Fred Astaire has 3 arms? And it came back and it said, yes, classic AI mistake. I said, ChatGPT, why did you give Fred Astaire 3 arms? And it said, oh, excellent question. It has to use 2 arms to dance with the Terminator, and the 3rd arm is for keeping the beat. Would you like me to redo it with Fred Astaire only having 2 arms? And I said, no, ChatGPT, you nailed it. Well done. Well done. I had to throw an old school meme in there. I think we're going to go back to these things. It's going to be more classic. And so what we're doing. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about like IT and cloud. This goes back to the security issues that I was just talking about, from dealing with alerts and dealing with vulnerabilities. But the complexity that we're dealing with in this industry, just in IT, is astounding, right? Just this crazy rise in complexity and interconnectedness between all of our different components. I'll give you an example. I'm writing a class now on satellite hacking, and in the class, you do a lot of research and things like that. And my background in satellite hacking originated at the NRO, the golf balls out of Buckley Air Force Base in Denver, Colorado. And I was working at Northrop Grumman at the time. And there was a tremendous amount of security and concerns for, like, basically, if you notice, they're in great big huge golf ball looking things. That's to protect the satellite dishes, but it's also so people can't see where the satellite dishes are pointing, right? And how they're moving, because that can actually help you. At least there was a concern 20 years ago, being able to track where the satellites are, that the satellite dishes are pointing, and you could actually get some intelligence out of that, some very, very significant intelligence out of that. You had that, and then there was a lot of concerns about what the backplane was, connecting ground stations with each other, right? So you would have ground station A, ground station B, and in some situations, they would have dedicated links between these ground stations that didn't go out over traditional ISPs, and they wouldn't be documented as dedicated links. So we had a lot of that. There was also some microwave links. Believe it or not, it's faster for light or for signals to travel through the air than it is through fiber optics cable. So we'd have all of this stuff. There was a lot of concern about the infrastructure. But today, you don't have that, right? If we look at the Starlink, when Starlink was DOSed by Russia during the earlier part of the Ukrainian war, Russia just DOSed their API endpoints in the cloud, right? That's all that they did. If you look at some of the cell phone outages that have occurred over the past couple of years, a lot of those outages are basically migration of existing technology, virtualizing it, and putting it into cloud infrastructure where it is, once again, vulnerable to a lot of the same DDoS and exposure vulnerabilities, because now this highly secured interface is now exposed directly in the cloud computing environments, and it's now more vulnerable to it. So when you're looking at all of this, right, when you're breaking all of this down, you are constantly getting into this type of scenario. And I had AI create this story, this picture from a story that I told it, and all the way back in 2006. There was a rep from IBM that showed up, and they were talking about their identity, federated identity and access tools, which they had as 2 separate tools. They had IBM Identity and IBM Access, 2 separate tools you had to buy. They couldn't stand alone, but they needed each other to work. And he got to this chart that was like the most convoluted chart I have ever seen. And it was a lot like that. And he looked at the group and said, this pretty much is self-explanatory, and moved on to the next slide. And I'm in the back of the room just like, you beautiful bastard. That is amazing. You just skipped right back of it. But that was 2006, right? A lot of the technology and the infrastructure that we have is getting more and more convoluted, and it's getting layered on top of each other. So if we're looking at cloud and we're looking at Entra ID or Azure or whatever, really that's just being laid over multiple different Active Directory environments. And a lot of the Active Directory vulnerabilities get replicated up inside of the cloud as well. And it sucks because we never solved Active Directory issues. We didn't. It was like, wow, that was a train wreck. That was really bad. Hey, cloud. And we all just migrated, right? Now, I'm never going to sit down and argue that keeping on-prem Exchange is a smart thing. I'm not going to say that. There's a lot of things that cloud infrastructure really helps with, Email is one of those things, right? It does a really good job. So it's really crazy, though, because when you're testing cloud infrastructures, there's too many black boxes. There's too many black boxes that exist today where we don't know what's happening. And when my team starts testing, I'll give you an example. One of my testers in my continuous pen testing practice, he was testing, and all of a sudden, he started seeing a whole bunch of variables coming back when we were testing Azure, and they were called Microsoft_internal, and then there were a variable, and then different GUIDs associated with it. And he calls me up and he's like, what do we do with this? And I'm like, back away slowly. Like, we don't know what that is. Step away, open up a ticket, right? So you have this problem with this complexity, and we're laying complexity on top of complexity. And a lot of the people that actually know how the technology works are dying. And it's going to be harder for us to try to secure these things. Cloud and exploited systems. I just kind of dropped this in there because, hey, what the hell? A lot of people, when they're trying to identify command and control, they're solely focused on the patterns associated with that command and control traffic. One of the things I'm trying to get more people to think of in terms of is who are you beaconing to, right? If you want to look at beacons, you can see Rita. It's a free tool. Just Rita at Active Countermeasures is one of the tools that we release for free. And we've been looking more and more and more about the systems that we're beaconing to are actually compromised. The ones that are real malware that is out there, rather than just focusing on the packets, focusing on the signature, focusing on the timing, we can also look at the endpoint. And something like 95% of the time, the endpoint is a compromised system. Like literally Shodan's like, yo, this system's compromised. One of the metrics that we have, aside from the tag compromised in Shodan, is looking at the number of ports that are open. Any server that you communicate with the internet ideally should have like 1 or 2 ports open to that server. Whenever you have a server that has this many ports open, it means it's either a very poorly managed system, or B, it's compromised. Possibly both, all right? So just some things to think about whenever you're doing threat hunting and you're creating your playbooks. Why not kick off an Nmap scan from some other cloud service and just get a list of what the ports are on those systems so you can get better understanding of what those systems are. But I also wanted to show you this. I was going to do a live demo, but the internet was kind of flaky at a HackerCon. Who knew? And this is in one of the classes I teach in Intro to Security, and I'm going to give you guys access to this lab so you can do this. Does that sound fair? Okay. So what I did is I took an aggregate IP blacklist. Once again, I'm just using IP addresses, but IP blacklists that are available on the internet. And then I'm feeding all of those IP addresses through Kimry, and I'm pulling down the ASN numbers of every one of those IP addresses, and I'm trying to identify what are the bad neighborhoods on the internet. So if I have a system that's beaconing to like the Xbox ASN network that has almost no blocks or bad IP addresses, but if somebody is connecting into the China backbone in Jinrong Street or Unicom or DigitalOcean, that might be something that we need to panic about. So the first number on the left is the number of deny-listed IP addresses associated with that single ASN. So DigitalOcean's ASN, what is it, 14,061, has 18,393 blacklisted IP addresses or deny-listed IP addresses. That's insane. And then China, because go China, and then we get into Microsoft and then Google Cloud Platform. If you're looking at the DigitalOcean and you're looking at the Microsoft ones and Google Cloud Platforms, that's where people are putting their cloud VDIs and their cloud services. So I like to kind of show this because it clearly articulates that we are not necessarily doing better by migrating everything to the cloud. And this highlights that, okay? And yes, I will share a lab with you all that can do that here in a bit. For cloud and post-exploitation, I wanted to leave you with a couple of tools that you need to run on your environment. And this is one of those concerns that I have. We've released tools, and I made my team that released this, and Bo, the main one, a little bit sad when I said we screwed up with GraphRunner. And GraphRunner is an amazing tool. There's nothing wrong with GraphRunner. But Bo created this amazing tool, which is free. Anyone can download it. Anyone can run it. Give it a standard user in your environment, and then you can run GraphRunner against it, and it'll identify tons of vulnerabilities for post-exploitation, and it runs all of these checks. I don't have time to go through all of them. It'll search and export email if you have someone's email address. It'll export SharePoint, OneDrive files that are accessible by the user, search all team chats and channels visible to the user, and export conversations, deploy malicious apps. If I'm outside of your tenant and I try to create an app, Microsoft will probably shoot that down, but it has very low security trust. But if I take over a standard user, almost every environment we test, individual users can create their own apps inside of your tenant. So I can stand up a malicious app for one of the users in your tenant and then use that as the spearfish watering hole to move laterally to take over other systems. Misconfigured mailboxes that are exposed, clone security groups. I don't know if you know this, but you can name security groups the exact same thing. Microsoft doesn't care. And be like the administrators group. You can create another administrators group. Doesn't matter. You don't even have to change it. Just call it administrators. And then you can have it where you're added to that administrator group. But there's all of these different vulnerabilities that it checks for, and it's free. And I feel when we released it with all of this capability, it was almost a wall of crap for people to deal with. It would have been better if we would have released each of these different things one at a time and let people digest it. And it's really heavily used, don't get me wrong, but I don't see as many organizations using it as should be using it. It is free. Run it in your cloud environments. Also, AzureHound, fantastic tool from SpecterOps. You should be running AzureHound. You take AzureHound, you run it, you can import it into BloodHound, and it'll show you multiple paths to getting to full administrator in your cloud infrastructure in Azure. Run these tools, please. All right. Little bit on standardization of mediocrity. We go all the way back to 2003, and on the left-hand side, I just made this up, just visual representation. As it goes up, it's the higher quality of security that we see. As it goes down, lower security quality. So BB King and all of my team, we would find apps that are very, very, very secure, and we found a lot of apps that were hot garbage. Right around 2023, it clustered to the standardization of mediocrity. What started happening in 2023? AI, vibe coding. The thing you need to understand is AI is a plagiarism engine. AI was trained on us. And all of our good and all of our bad code made AI what it is today. And this is not good. We're seeing a lot of organizations where they aren't great, they aren't bad, but they aren't great. It's just becoming very meh. And that in and of itself is not the problem. The problem is we still have business logic errors that we see. And then the other problem is when people are using vibe code, like I hate it whenever I listen to like news that's financial markets news, and I have these people show up like Kramer throwing, plastic cows at the camera and shit, where he's like, this is going to be fundamentally transformation to all of the different computer development that's out there because it's automatically going to be writing code and we don't need to have developers and it's going to drive costs down. And then your pen testing team shows up and we take your app apart and we talk to your team. Hey, who do we talk to about how to fix this? Some recommendations. And they say, I don't know. The code was written by AI. It worked. We dropped it into production. And then it gets expensive to fix it. So I don't know what to do about that one. That one just sucks. But hey, if you're in pen testing, yay for us, right? Job security for a good long time. More Cloud ForeverDays. This is Jeremiah. He works on our continuous pen testing division. And his whole thing is finding data breaches and sharing them with groups like Flare and checking it out internally. He's also Ukrainian, and he likes messing with Russia, too, for being recorded. Hi, Russia. So, at any rate, a couple of weeks ago, he came, and he's like, I just found 2 exposed, I think these were Elastic servers that were completely exposed to the internet, no security, very similar to S3 buckets, but slightly different. And he was like, we got 149 million records, and what was it? DB1 was 380 million records. And he kind of broke down some of this. 48 million Gmail. These are user IDs and passwords, by the way. These are from InfoStealer logs. So what this is the hackers break into your systems at home. Then they run InfoStealers. They harvest your user IDs and passwords. And then they load them up on services, like in this situation, Elastic. And then they don't secure it. And this one, you can see we have 48 million Gmail accounts, 4 million Yahoo, 1.5 million Outlook, Edu, Facebook, Instagram, Netflix, 100,000 OnlyFans, 420,000 Binance creds. So we take this and then we run it through and we see if it correlates to any of the users for any of the customers that we're doing continuous pen testing on. Do that, then we share it out with Flare. But we find this stuff almost weekly, right? And this also highlights the main problem, one of the main problems that we have for cloud computing. Almost all of cloud computing security, aside from corporate, is handled through a user ID and a password. And if you can get into a personal account, it doesn't take very long to start pivoting over to corporate assets as well. Working with large vendors, I'm just gonna kind of go with this. It sucks. It's just not fun. Oracle has completely shut my entire company down. Back when we were, not Oracle, sorry, Google. Oracle hasn't yet. They would have liked to. Oracle, we spent like a month and a half going back with their developers on a whole bunch of vulnerabilities we found in one of their software packages, and they didn't fix it until I threatened to do a live webcast on how to exploit it. Google shut us down. Sorry, I got that wrong. We discovered a vulnerability. We released it publicly. We were using it in a pen test, and the Google called our customer and said, hey, we're seeing this attack against you. It's an attack that was discovered by Black Hills Information Security. Are they testing you right now? And our customer said, no, even though we were, because they wanted to, quote unquote, see what would happen. What happened was Google shut down the personal accounts of my tester, the personal accounts of all of his family, anyone that tried to authenticate from his IP address, and locked us out of our entire company until we could prove to them that we had a signed contract. That's important because that's bully tactics. Microsoft is a pain as well. They're all varying shades of bad. Oh, by the way, this cookie picture, if you look down on the bottom, you remember when Amazon went down last year and it brought down a good chunk of the internet? Anytime anything goes down in the internet, my kids call me and they're like, are you pen testing them right now? So let's get to the good stuff. One of the things I want to tell you is we've already thought about this at the Department of Justice. I was lucky to work on the Capital One case as an expert witness, and some amazing attorneys developed their kind of standards for finding security vulnerabilities in cloud vendors. And it's called Good Faith Security Research, and you need to read it. It basically says you can find security vulnerabilities, you can share security vulnerabilities, work with the vendor, don't try to steal it and run crypto miners and do all kinds of crazy things, but you can still do security research as long as it's done in good faith. And they have very clearly articulated what good faith is. Don't be afraid of Google, Microsoft, and Oracle, and all of these different vendors, and Amazon. Amazon especially is pretty cool to work with. I'm just going to throw that out there. We've had good interactions with them in the past. So you can do research, just what you do with it is important, and how you communicate it is important. If you get into trouble, pick up the phone and call me. I know people, we can talk it through, okay? But if you're like, hey, I'm seeing something weird in Amazon and stuff, I want to do some research, you can. Absolutely, as long as it's done in good faith, okay? All right, so here's the silver lining to all of this. I told you I was going to end on a positive note. We live in the golden age of security education. Here's that meme I told you I created. Cash cow training got out of hand. I was absolutely a part of the problem, right? The classes I was teaching got up to around $9,000 for a week before I got out. And I'm telling you right now, we didn't get a lot of that as the instructors and authors. I also want to say, if you're a training company, you cannot be patriotic and have 90+% profit margin on the training that you're doing for the United States government. Full stop. I had a conversation with an EU salesperson a long time ago with an organization I was doing stuff with, and I've discovered that we had a whole bunch of people that were from Russia that were taking training, and up until that point, it was verboten. They didn't allow anybody from Russian email addresses or military to come to our classes. And that person told me, no, you don't get it, man. If we train the attackers and we train the defenders, we're working both sides of the equation and we make money no matter what. I feel sick to my stomach. I can't be part of that. And I want to say this to cash cow training that's crazy expensive: so long. You won't be missed. Because this industry has heroes. We have people like John Hammond, Kevin Johnson. We have, of course, Simply Cyber. Any fans here of Simply Cyber, right? Jerry is awesome, Team Simply Cyber. There's people out there that are going at this every single day to try to train people for free. And that is the silver lining. Education is more accessible now in the industry than it's ever been. At BHIS, we started up Pay What You Can training. It was a huge change for me. Happened during COVID. It's far more fulfilling. And I make as much money doing Pay What You Can training, where people pay whatever they want, than I did teaching an entire class for the SANS Institute for 6 days, just by being kind. That works, and it's available. Thanks. I don't care where you come from. I don't care your race, religion, creed, sexuality. I just want you to come and hang out and be part of it. So come hack with us. And to that end, you want to take a picture of this slide. I'm announcing here, before even Wild West Hacking Fest next week, that we're going to start up Free Lab Fridays. If you have taken any of my Pay What You Can training, you know that I give you all free labs in the cloud. It's a Windows system. It's a Kali system. It's browser-based, no VMs. You don't have to worry about having a system that can run it. We're going to start giving everyone that signs up and does this 2 free hours of training and lab time per week, no questions asked, for everyone in the community. Thanks. I'm over on time, but anybody can get up here on stage and they can bitch and they can complain and they can talk about how bad things are. I don't want to be that. I want to be somebody that's part of the solution. I want to be part of the solution and helping other people be part of the solution. And this is one of the ways that we can do that. So thank you so much for your time today, and help me be part of the solution. Take care, everybody.